What did it mean when Jesus healed the leper in today's gospel? I have a few thoughts. And first, we need to look at the first reading from the Old Testament book of Leviticus. It's an image that sticks in your mind. If someone in those days had leprosy, they had to tear their clothes and call out, "Unclean, unclean," and live away from the rest of the community. I checked what it meant to be unclean. It meant something unclean was unfit to offer to the temple for worship. And not just people could be unclean, but food and other items. Leviticus uses the word unclean over 100 times. And more to the point, for today's gospel story, whoever touches something unclean becomes unclean themselves. So Jesus, the man, was a good Jew, and he certainly followed the Mosaic law. And we see, another good Jew, Peter, in Acts chapter 10, verse 14, when he receives a vision of unclean animals with the instruction to slaughter and eat, he protests, "Certainly not I, sir. Never have I eaten anything profane and unclean." Now, Jesus' answer to the man might be just as simple as the way the man phrased the question. If you listen, the man asked him, "If you wish, you can make me clean." And Jesus answers, "I do will it, be made clean." So with that said, I just wonder if Jesus had to overcome his natural instinct to follow the law of Moses and hesitated a bit. Listen again, Jesus says, moved with pity, he stretched out his hand, touched him, and said to him, "I do will it, be made clean." I do will it. Whether or not Jesus hesitated because of that, the Mosaic law dictated that by touching him, he himself would have been made unclean. And we don't really know anything about what effect that had on Jesus. Being God, the gospel's silent about it. But it does tell us that Jesus overcomes any concern for his own well-being for the sake of healing this man. And we see this disregard most clearly in his passion and death. This may give a little foreshadowing of him. An observation for us in all this is that when we least expect it, God can place, let's call them lepers in our lives. Probably not real lepers, people with Hansen's disease, but people who are difficult or demand our time or need our help. In those moments, we can ask our Lord to help us to see them as he would see them and try to do what we can for them. Now, two things happen in the gospel after Jesus healed the man. Even though Jesus told him to tell no one, the man proclaimed it to everybody, right? So we can just imagine what joy that man felt, not only for being healed, but being allowed to just be another normal person again and rejoin the community. Now, with that said, let's look at the second thing that happened. Because the healing proclaimed by this man caused such a sensation, now Jesus himself had to remain apart from the community. Right? He had to stay in remote places because so many people came to him. So isn't that an irony? It says almost as if Jesus exchanged places with this man in becoming isolated where this man used to be isolated. And again, Jesus takes our place on the cross. So what does that mean for us? Well, we're probably not going to cause the same kind of sensation by a miraculous healing. However, if we make it plain to people that we are faithful Catholic Christians, we might find ourselves a little bit ostracized or on the outside. Is that a price we're willing to pay? St. Paul writes in the second reading, "Be imitators of me as I am of Christ." We know that Paul suffered hardship imprisonment and beatings. And again, we only have to look at the crucifix to see what Jesus suffered for us. So we probably will not suffer such extremes, but are we willing to make ourselves target for other people's words or criticisms? And more to the point, why should we? Well, it's a matter of how much we love our Lord and how much we love our neighbors. You know, if we don't stand up for truth or saying what's right, maybe no one else will. And we could be the only person that someone else needs to hear that from. You know, you can bet that the healed leper became a disciple of Jesus. So he not only experienced physical healing, but the greatest healing of all, spiritual healing, the forgiveness of sins. If we can help healing someone physically or spiritually, what joy we could give them and what joy we could have.